If you're watching this in the United States, stop scrolling for 10 seconds, because what you're about to hear sounds like fiction until you realize how close it feels to home. And if stories that hit hard, twist late, and stay with you after midnight are your thing, hit subscribe right now, because this channel tells the stories they don't put on the news. The ones that make you rethink everything you thought was safe, familiar, and permanent. And now the story begins. On the morning America forgot tomorrow, Evan Calder woke up to the sound of every notification on his phone going off at once. Not the staggered buzz of texts or the soft ping of an email, but a chaotic chorus like the device itself was panicking. And when he reached for it in the half-dark of his Ohio apartment, the screen didn't show messages from friends or headlines from CNN or weather alerts like usual. It showed a single sentence repeated across every app, every feed, every alert banner, every emergency channel, written in the same blunt font, as if the country had decided to speak with one voice. This is the last normal day. Evan laughed at first, because that's what you do when something is too big to process. He assumed it was a prank, an ARG, some viral marketing stunt for a streaming show. But then he heard sirens. Too many, overlapping, not rushing toward a single emergency, but spreading outward like a net. And when he stepped onto his balcony, he saw neighbors standing frozen in pajamas, phones glowing in their hands, faces drained of color, and down on the highway traffic had slowed to a crawl, even though it was only 6:12 a.m., horns blaring in confusion rather than anger. And somewhere far off a helicopter hovered, unmoving, like it was afraid to land. And Evan's phone vibrated again, this time with a video notification from a number labeled simply Archive. And against every instinct screaming at him to throw the phone into the sink and turn on the TV, he tapped it. And the video that played was not a politician or a general or a scientist, but a woman sitting alone in a plain white room, mid-30s, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back like she hadn't slept in days. And she looked directly into the camera and said, "If you're seeing this, it means we failed." And then she paused, swallowing hard, and said, "My name is Dr. Mara Klein, and the future has already ended." And Evan felt something inside him shift, like the floor of reality had tilted a few degrees, because she spoke calmly, not like someone predicting disaster, but like someone reading a coroner's report, explaining that for the last 30 years, a classified program known as Tomorrow Vault had been collecting data from one source. No one outside the project was told about. Not satellites, not simulations, not AI predictions, but direct recordings from timelines that no longer existed, futures that had collapsed, rewound, or been erased entirely. And every time the program intervened, nudging policy, averting wars, stopping pandemics before patient zero was ever named, the timeline stabilized just enough for people to believe the world was simply progressing normally. Before this story ends, power will flip, truth will sting, and a man who thought his badge made him untouchable will wish he'd never left his cruiser. So if you care about justice, accountability, and stories that expose what power really looks like in America, hit subscribe right now and stay with me, because this one cuts deep. On a humid summer evening in a Midwestern city that prided itself on quiet streets and loud assumptions, Officer Kyle Mercer leaned against his patrol car outside a corner grocery, the neon sign buzzing like an irritated insect, watching a black man in a wrinkled gray jacket count change at the register through the window. And Kyle's jaw tightened with the kind of irritation that came not from anything the man was doing, but from a lifetime of being told, subtly and not so subtly, who belonged, where and who needed watching. And when the man stepped outside with a paper bag and brushed past him by accident, murmuring a quick, "Sorry," Kyle seized the moment like it was owed to him, blocking the sidewalk with his body and asking where the man thought he was going, voice sharp, eyes cold. The man freezing because he knew this dance, knew how quickly a misunderstanding could become something worse. And he calmly explained he was heading home after a long shift at the city planning office. But Kyle scoffed, asked for ID anyway, letting the pause stretch just long enough to assert dominance. And when the man hesitated, more tired than defiant, Kyle stepped closer, the air between them thick with heat and history, and in a moment that would later replay in courtrooms, newsrooms, and his own nightmares, Kyle spat, the glob landing on the man's shoe. A deliberate act meant to humiliate, to remind him of his place, and for a split second the street went silent, as if the city itself had inhaled. And the man looked down at his shoe, then back up, eyes steady, voice even, asking quietly, "Are you done?" Which only enraged Kyle more because there was no fear there, no bowing, just a calm that felt like an accusation. And Kyle barked at him to move along before things got worse, not noticing the older woman across the street lifting her phone, not noticing the teenager in the bus shelter recording, not noticing that power, real power, was already slipping through his fingers because the man did walk away, slow and deliberate, leaving Kyle with a sense of victory that tasted metallic and wrong. And for the rest of the night, Kyle told the story to himself as proof that he was still in control, that he was keeping order. But by morning, the video was everywhere. The spit captured in high definition. The pause afterward, a mirror America didn't like but couldn't look away from. And the department went into crisis mode, issuing statements about reviewing the incident. While Kyle was placed on administrative leave and told by his union rep to stay quiet, and he did, stewing in his apartment, watching commentators argue about racism and policing, convinced he was the real victim of a media witch hunt, until the twist no one expected began to unfold. Because the man in the gray jacket wasn't just any city employee, he was Marcus Hill, a name that didn't trend until reporters dug deeper and found that Marcus had been quietly recruited months earlier to take on one of the hardest jobs in the city, a reform-minded leader with decades of experience in internal affairs, federal oversight, and community rebuilding, a man known for listening more than speaking, for documenting everything, and for believing that systems only change when truth is dragged into the light. And the announcement hit like thunder. Marcus Hill would be sworn in as the city's new police chief in 2 weeks, the first black chief in its history, and suddenly, the clip of Kyle spitting wasn't just viral outrage. It was context. It was prophecy. It was evidence. And Kyle felt the ground drop out from under him as he watched the press conference. Marcus standing at the podium, voice calm, acknowledging the pain the video had caused, refusing to name Kyle, refusing to inflame, saying only that accountability would be fair, thorough, and unavoidable. And that word, unavoidable, echoed in Kyle's head for days, because when Marcus took office, he didn't come in swinging. He didn't fire Kyle on day one like everyone expected. Instead, he ordered a full departmental review, reopened complaints long buried, instituted body cam audits, and mandated training that forced officers to sit with community members and hear stories they'd never been required to hear before. And Kyle was called back in, uniform stiff, hands sweating. And when he finally stood in Marcus's office, the memory of that spit burned hotter than shame, and Marcus looked at him for a long